Hey, hope you enjoy this new video. It's kind of a new format. Dylan and I were going to lift in the morning in the shop. We figured we'd throw in our new Digi microphones and just record a conversation while we worked out about business, home inspections, real estate, entrepreneurship, having relationships within business. So I hope you enjoy. We're probably going to do more of these, both with Dylan and myself and others, and kind of playing around with the idea.
We're going to do our regular daily lifting, have a little chat, kind of combine the two. What do we got going on today?
We've got some power snatching, some, let's see here, high hang cleans, hang clean, and some clean pulls. Let's see here, two.
So we're at the gym early in the morning. Both of us have leg issues, so we're not at the workout this morning because of the double unders.
Whew. Yeah, it kind of makes me feel old.
And Dylan was up till midnight last night writing home reports. Hard at work.
Oh.
What other home inspector do you know does that?
Yeah, dude, seriously.
Yeah.
It's good. I mean, rolling into the busy season, it's kind of how it goes. Last year, I mean, I definitely don't think it's the crazy market that we saw in, 2021 and 22, but from what I can see and kind of my general consensus talking to other realtors, it definitely seems like it's already better than 23 was. I mean, that was a slow year for a lot of realtors for sure.
Are you seeing a difference in like the types of homes? I mean, I see what's like listed for sale in the MLS, but like the ones that are going into escrow, the ones that you're inspecting for buyers, it's pretty much the same as they've always been, just like the variety around here.
Yeah, I would say
as many high ticket homes.
I would say definitely variety. I mean, I think one of the new popular trends I'm seeing is, a lot more like the mobile home and the manufactured home has kind of become like the new starter home, because a lot of those are like still running for, $350,000 to $500,000. So, for a lot of buyers, that's kind of what they can afford.
Most of them are. A lot of the ones in North County are like 55 and older.
Yeah, that is kind of a struggle, I think.
So where like most of them? I mean, South County's got like a fair amount of them, right?
Yeah, so South County has quite a bit, like San Luis specifically. I think it's Silver. I always forget the name of it.
Silver City?
Silver City. That's a popular one.
And Slow?
Yeah. Another one that actually, it's actually not a bad idea if you were like an investor, but I just did one over there at South Peaks over on South Street.
Yeah.
Kind of where South tees into Higuera. And there's a lot of tiny little like, newer ones are like, 5 years old or less, and they're little like 2-bed, 1-bath, 800 square feet, 5 to 800 square feet. They're good little rentals. Like the one I did was like a Cal Poly rental, a couple kids living in it. They go for like, I think that one was going for like 160 or something.
Right.
So, if you're someone who's got some cash saved up and don't want to have a mortgage, it's not a bad option.
Right. Yeah, 10 years ago, when Karen and I bought our first place, it's in the around 300. Like a little townhouse was kind of like the norm around here.
For sure.
Like now like the mobile home price around here.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. I mean, that kind of, the days of the 300 starter home are kind of gone unless you, are willing to maybe do a manufactured home or something like that. Or, I mean, I did just do one in Atascadero. It's like at $299. It was a small little 1-bed, 1-bath, about 600 square feet over there, kind of by the junior high. Those condos over there. Yeah, on Capistrano, right there at the corner.
Are you doing like 2 a day on average?
Yeah, 2 a day's 2 days pretty. I mean, my average. I usually like to do 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon. I do 3 a day. I mean, like this week I've actually had 2 days where I did 3.
Yeah.
I try not to do that more than twice a week unless I have a
helper.
Yeah, my helper, because it's a lot. Like last night, it makes for a long day. It's like 8-10 hours out in the field inspecting, and then you have a lot of time report writing, so it just makes for a long day.
It feels cool doing power snatches. We've been doing regular squat snatches for weeks. We haven't had power snatches programmed in a while.
So nice. Here, I'll take this. Yeah, I mean, what would you say? Do you feel like it's been a busier first quarter of the year for you guys?
Compared to last year,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. Well, just we had that Los Osos listing in December.
Yeah.
It went live with January 4th or 5th, and it was a total like fixer upper for like 500,000. And just the amount of interest in that like blew my mind. Like how many people were interested in such like a fixer upper that was only a 1-bedroom
For sure.
for that price range. So it just shows like anything in like the 5 to 800,000 price range right now is like gone.
No, you're spot on. I mean, the demand's there. I mean, I think that's everything we're seeing because of the home prices being so high. Is I think a lot more people. They're like, I guess you'd say their expectations are a lot lower, so they're a lot more willing to get a fixer upper or something that needs work if it's just in their price range.
Right.
What about with the sun being out now? Is the painting picked up?
Well, the painting is like pretty consistent all the time. Because the painting's like maintenance, so like the company stays busy to a certain degree just based on people's needs like throughout the year. Doesn't matter the economy. But yeah, I think last we chatted about it. Like we've got 5 crews, and we're booked out to like I want to say the middle of May, end of May.
Wow,
so we're about 5 weeks booked out, and it's good. We got some rock stars, Eric and Stephanie out there selling all the paint jobs, and our crews are just getting them done, making people happy, and we've got a really awesome group of guys right now. So it's pretty cool. I like it. So lately it's been great since I've got 2 salespeople now. So I'm basically, the goal is to be completely real estate in the afternoon and then painting company in the morning.
Yeah.
So I can do my marketing and finance and sales management stuff like in the morning for the painting company. In the afternoon, I can be at the real estate at Peek Realty, focusing on prospecting, marketing, and all that stuff.
For sure.
Editing videos like this or whatever. But yeah, it's going to be, it's an interesting year because it's an election year. So, it could be that the last election year we had, I'm talking about like in terms of like people's like buyer hesitancy and everything.
Yeah, no, totally.
The last election year we had also happened to be COVID, 2020. So we couldn't really use that as an example of like what the market's going to be like.
It's historically, so like in 16.
So people usually hold on to their money like from July to November or August to November a little bit more because they're waiting to see if their guy wins or.
Yeah,
it's kind of weird how people behave, But it could be, that we just up our marketing efforts for both real estate and painting and through the summer so that we stay busy in the fall. It's just a cycle. We're since we're in home services, but we're also realtors. You know, we were talking about this topic the other day. That like before I was a realtor, I dealt with a lot of realtors from a painting contractor's perspective, and then you're technically in real estate. I don't know. Would you call yourself home services? I guess you would, right?
Yeah, I call it home real estate services. Yeah.
I mean, when you check the box on Google.
Yeah, on Google or like
You
if
know,
they ask like, what do you do for a living? What services? Like real estate services is usually what I put it under.
And dealing with, so this is not to sound judgmental or like high horse or anything, but dealing with the general public sometimes, you know, you have to educate people on like what realtors do or what home services do, how they operate, and like what we're, the most efficient way to communicate with home services and vice versa.
Yeah, totally.
Is a lot of realtors, they become realtors, and it's not necessarily their fault. There's no real, unless you have like a brokerage that has heavy training. There's not a lot of like training in terms of like how to communicate with people.
Yeah, totally.
There's a lot of training on how to make forms and
for
how to
sure
do a listing presentation, but there's not like ways to communicate. And I would say, I'll give you one example too, from the painting perspective. You get a realtor that like, what do you call it, catfishing?
Yeah.
Where they're like, I need a quote for this house. My clients are closing escrow and they're gonna want to get the whole thing painted. And you're like, ooh, yeah. And you go out there and you spend an hour and you build the quote and everything, and you get it all done, you send it over, and then 2 weeks later you follow up. Oh, you close an escrow? Oh yeah, we decided not to paint. It's a little bit more than we thought.
Yeah.
And you really find out that they wanted the price just to use for negotiation during like the request for repairs.
For sure.
They're saying, oh, we need to get the house painted, so that's about $10,000. So why don't you knock off $6,000? And they're just using it for that purpose. And so it can be kind of discouraging because our time's valuable.
Yeah, totally.
And I'm sure as a realtor, like when I call someone like you, or when I call you, we want to say like, we're ready. We need an inspection. We need an inspection. The house is ready on this date. Let's get it done. I mean, we know what it's going to cost. You just tell us over the phone roughly what it'll cost, and it's boom, ready to go. But
yeah,
you run into stuff like that where it's like you get jerked around.
Yeah, I mean, I get a lot of times people price shopping, is a big one. Fortunately, the one advantage I have is, all my pricing is based on square footage and a crawl space. So like, I can give someone an estimate in about 25 seconds. It's like,
Right.
Hey, how big is it? Boom, boom. So at least I don't have that time waste of like, going out to it, writing up this whole proposal, that kind of thing. But, you do get a lot of people who just, all they care about is price, which is pretty crazy when you think about it. Cause, we're talking sometimes, multi-million-dollar assets. I mean, I've done houses that are $3, $4, $5 million and, be a $3 million house and someone calls for a price and, hey, you come highly recommended, that kind of thing. And then we'll want to squabble over $25, $50
Right.
and be like, oh, well, this guy was $50 cheaper, and in my mind, it's like, well, you're buying this like $3 million asset. Don't you want, a really like highly like thorough recommended professional looking through it? Do you really want to take the chance of saving 50, maybe $100 and go with, a company that might not do as good of a job?
Yeah.
It's like in the long run, to me, it's worth an extra $100. So that can be frustrating sometimes. You're kind of like, man, we're dealing with like probably your biggest investment for most people. And, they just don't always see the value. You kind of have to show them the value,
How often, let's stop distracting you for a minute.
Okay. Go.
What are we supposed to build up to 70 and then do sets of 2?
Yeah, sets of 2. Yeah, that's what I'm on.
All right, 135. How often do you feel like you're educating realtors on like their job?
Honestly, it varies week to week, but a lot. Like this week's been a pretty heavy week as far as I've probably had like, 3 or 4 different realtors of like having to kind of help them, explain the process. I think a thing that's really missing in, like you were saying about the real estate is like, they educate on contracts, how to prospect, this, that, and the other. But a lot of brokers don't really educate on the home inspection process. Like, hey, what's important, what to look for, what can be deal killers, what's going to cost a lot of money to fix, that kind of thing.
Why is my grass brown? I don't know.
Yeah, no.
It hasn't been watered in a while.
Yeah, and it's funny. You get questions about stuff that, in my mind, I'm like, oh wow, that's not super important. Your roof's failing, but you're wondering about like a gopher issue, And so, yeah, it is a lot of educating. I mean, I just did a presentation last week to a real estate office. The broker had asked me to come in and just show them, hey, here's how to read a home inspection report. Here's how to look for what's important.
Yeah.
Here's stuff that can cost a lot of money. That kind of stuff, because the home inspection process, as you know, is like such an important and key piece of the real estate game, but it's probably one that, is realtors are least educated on or understand,
right.
Which is unfortunate. It's, like I said, it's a super important aspect, and it's really where you're finding all the problems, and a lot of times is what realtors are going to be using for negotiations. Well, so you were saying earlier about how you have, realtors that a lot of times will call you, catfish you just because they want a quote. Do you ever have like I don't want to say like a 3-strike policy, but where it's like, hey, this realtor has called me 4 times for quotes and it's never once converted, and it's kind of like you see that pattern of like, I'm just wasting my time because they just want a credit, and then which I think, time's valuable in business. It's like nothing personal, but it's like, how often can you just go out to a job for free in a sense?
Yeah, it's I think it's more so property managers that I stopped calling.
Yeah.
Because it's a race to the bottom for some of them in terms of pricing. So they're getting 3 painting quotes, and they're just going to go with the cheapest anyway, and we're not the cheapest.
Yeah.
But we provide the best communication that we can, and we provide like the best service, and our guys are top notch, no knuckleheads. I mean, we perform a very good service, and our guys are very dialed in. Like,
for sure.
So people, they like what they get. But I would say with realtors, unless they're a high performing realtor, I mean, you're talking like some realtors do like 2 to 4 deals a year. So they're not gonna, a lot of realtor. I think the average realtor in California, like the ones that are selling, are doing like 2 to 4 a year. I saw some statistic.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So there's so many realtors that are, basically just doing a few here and there. It's not even like maybe a full-time job. So you might get a call from someone every once in a while, but you're not, the ones that are calling more often, they're usually seasoned and they usually know how it goes. And they don't play games.
For sure.
But you do get the random one that's just like, you could tell, like the DRE number is a little higher, like closer to like within the last couple, 2-3 years that they became a realtor. That might be a little bit more like, hey, we're looking. They don't know how to talk about it. I'm like, hey, do you just need a ballpark? Because I can give you a ballpark.
Yeah, for sure.
So usually that's what I'll do. And so the same on my end, because I can give a ballpark on a 2,000 square foot house. They want the outside painted, it's stucco. Okay, $15,000. 12 grand. I don't know, like depending on the product you want to use.
Yeah. And
so it makes them go, all right, thanks, I appreciate that. And if they want a form, I can send a little like boilerplate quote just to use as evidence. But it's not like, hey, when the time comes, we'd be happy to give you a firm one. And it really builds that trust too.
Yeah.
Because they're like, hey, these guys got my, they have our best interest in mind, and they're not afraid to give a ballpark price.
Yeah.
A lot of contractors are like, I can't ballpark it. It's like,
if you know your trade, you should be able to like
somewhat ballpark.
Yeah. Again, not down to the nickel, obviously. It's like
But as a realtor, it goes the other way too. So if I'm calling HVAC companies to come look at a house, or I'm calling, like, say for instance, I know you, so it's a little different, but if I was gonna call you, I'd be like, hey man, this house is like, it's kind of run down. It's in this area. It's this square footage. It's built in this year. Giving the details, be like, I mean, you could just tell me the price, basically, unless something really pops up. So it's a little bit different. But if I'm calling like an HVAC company and going, hey, I need to evaluate the system, I'm not going to say, hey, come out here there for free, give me a free estimate. I mean, if they volunteered, I'm going to say, yeah, but like, hey, I'm going to have on the conversation on the phone, like, this is what I need. I don't need you to fix anything. I need you to go and look at it and and give me a quote, what to do. What does that cost me?
For sure.
And I need someone to say, it's going to be $89. And a good example of that, who's a, forgive me if you're listening and you're not this company and you know me, but Be Right There.
Yeah. No, they're great.
Every time I call them, they're just like, the dispatch, it's got a nice like menu. The dispatch lady is like super thorough. She gets all the details. She's like, who should I follow up with? Who should I call? And they just get so many details. And the technicians are always super, the technicians remind me of you. You're like super chipper on the phone, very explain everything to the T, remember everybody's names.
For sure.
I mean, it's just like.
It's that service. You feel like, oh, I'm getting taken care of.
And then they provide you a quote right then. And they give you different levels of a package.
Yeah.
And so as a realtor, when I call a vendor, it's like, I know I don't want to waste their time. And I honestly don't want to waste my time. So I don't want to go like make an appointment, go to a house, unlock it, and the plumber never shows up.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
I had a showing the other day, and I came to meet them specifically to unlock it, and they never showed up. And half an hour later, I texted like, "Oh, we decided to look at some other properties." I'm like, "Where do you come from? Like, where is that an okay thing to do? To just not, like, give a courtesy text?"
I think that's a big.
You get shown up sometimes, right?
Oh yeah, no, that happened to me. I mean, last week, I was telling you about. I drove all the way out to the lake, and there was no communication, and I had to pretty much go home. I mean, I think that's a big education piece with not just realtors, but the general public, and I think we're hyper aware of it because, we come from home service backgrounds, and I grew up, my dad's an electrician, so like understanding like time is money and it's valuable to business owners. And so, I don't think people always understand that. I think there's a big disconnect of like, hey, that was just an hour of my day wasted that I could have done something else. And so I think that's a big education piece too, honestly, with realtors. They don't understand like, when you come out to a property and they're like, oh, hey, like, yeah, I'll come look at it for an hour, and you're like, oh, it's going to be X price, and they're like, well, what do you mean? You're not just going to come out for free? And it's like, if I got to come out for an hour and, walk, it's like, there's got to be a charge involved. If you just worked for free all the time, it's like, that wouldn't be a very good business strategy.
Right. Well, I'm always trying to look for the defense of the person who's making the offense.
Yeah.
So like you have like the realtors are working, they're not getting hourly. They're just showing up.
For sure.
You might show a house for a year. You might show people houses for a year, and then finally they buy a house and you get your commission. So maybe in their mind, a lot of them think that anybody in the real estate world, like yourself included, you're coming out, you're checking it out. Hopefully it turns into an inspection.
For sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So sometimes people have to just be educated.
Yeah, no, and that's what I mean. I never blame anyone, or I don't think there's any. It's just that education piece. You know what I mean? And I think most people, it's like once you explain it to them, they're like, oh yeah, that makes total sense. Like a big question I get a lot is, hey, do you get paid out of escrow? Like, can we bill you through escrow?
Yeah.
And that's something I've done on occasion, or if it's a realtor I work with a lot. But we really don't do it, and once you explain it to people and realtors, like, oh, that makes sense, is because, they're so used to, they get paid out of escrow, right? Because they're not getting paid till the deal is closed. But the thing is my service is done before escrow closes, and sometimes the deal doesn't go through. Sometimes
you find a leaky shower pan.
Yeah, sometimes I find the leaking shower pan that costs, thousands of dollars to fix, and the deal doesn't go through. So it doesn't really make sense to get paid through escrow because we're providing a service, and we're getting paid regardless of if the deal closes or not. And sometimes a lot of times the stuff we find is what ends up, putting the kibosh on the deal. So it's like, that's kind of why we don't really, like to get paid out of escrow. Well, I think the other important thing, and you could probably speak to this being a realtor as well, is having that vendor list of trusted vendors that you work with and can rely on and call. I mean, that's invaluable. You know what I mean? Especially because on a vendor side, realtors that I work with a lot and are super easy to work with, they refer me a lot. I always take care of everyone, but they're definitely, if there's someone who's always professional, punctual, on it, when they need something, I'm going to make sure they get taken care of. It's like when they're like, hey, Dylan, I'm really in a pinch. I really need to get this inspection. I've got a short contingency window. I'll make it work. Hey, I can come out maybe late in the day, and I'll take care of them. And a lot of times, if that is the difference between a deal working or not, I mean, that's invaluable. So I think realtors building that, that service list of trusted vendors,
right,
and then them taking care of you and vice versa, you taking care of them, making sure you're showing up on time to open up their property. Those are the kind of things that upset vendors usually. It's like, hey, this realtor is always 25 minutes late, so that puts me back on my day. They're not friendly or professional. They, the kind of stuff that as a vendor, you're like, oh man, I don't really feel like I'm trying to take care of them, but I don't feel that, reciprocation.
Right. What side are you on?
I think this is my last one.
Yeah, me too.
Then
High hang cleans.
High hang clean.
Uno más.
My goal is to, and this should be every inspector's goal. Now, that's not always the case, but, I always talk about being that neutral third party and being neutral and fair to a house. You know what I mean? If something's broken and needs to be corrected, then yeah, it does. But if it's not broken, people think just because the buyers hired you that you need to be, pretty much saying something's broken when it's not so they can get a credit, that kind of thing. It's like, we're a neutral third party. So, my whole goal is that regardless of who hires me, the report is the exact same. And so, and I've gotten feedback from that from realtors where it's like, hey, you're thorough, but you're fair. So they know on both sides of it, whether they're the listing agent, the buyer's agent. My goal is that when I come out to a property, they're like, yeah, Dylan's fair. You know what I mean? And so that's always my goal, is that if a agent's familiar with me or has worked with me, that if they see my report on a property, they know, hey, he's thorough, but he's fair. And so, that they trust it pretty much.
Yeah, so the buyer's agent already kind of knows you too.
Yeah, exactly. Which again, back to like, it can be hard because there's so many people in the real estate industry and new agents all the time and turnover and other things that, a lot of times you get an agent with like, I haven't worked with you, but they've only done 2 deals. You know what I mean?
Right.
So like, of course they probably haven't worked with me.
Right.
You know what I mean? But the goal is amongst those established agents who are doing multiple deals that they know me, and at least if they don't, use me, they're like, hey, yeah, you know what? The goal is that like, yeah, Dylan's fair. You know what I mean? Like,
for sure.
Because the sad thing is you do get that in the inspection industry. I mean, you do get, and I hate to say like this, but inspectors who might try to leave something off because they don't want to upset an agent on the listing side or vice versa. And so, and I have seen it, not a whole lot, but there are definitely, talks where an agent will maybe use one inspector because, he won't mention as much stuff or that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So my goal is always to try to like, it's a hard line to walk, but kind of walk that middle line, you know? what are some things as like a realtor, because I know we've worked together the last few years and I know you've used other inspectors and previous before me. What are some things as like I always like feedback as like a realtor that, inspectors do or stuff that's like frustrating, would you say? If you have any, you know what I mean? I always like to just, like anything, it's like get feedback of, okay, what are some things as realtors where you feel like, oh man, this is frustrating or could improve the process as an industry?
I guess it's availability, really. If it's like you're in a 17-day buyer inspection period and like the home inspector says they can't get out there for like 7 business days. I mean, to be quite honest, sometimes it'll just make you go call someone else because it's like, you need to get the inspection, you need to review the inspection, and then you need to decide if you're going to ask for a request for repairs.
For sure.
It really can come under the gun if you don't call in an inspection like the first day. And sometimes the client doesn't always decide on hiring an inspector like the first day.
Yeah.
You might tell them like, hey, we don't get an inspection. I recommend you get an inspection since there wasn't a pre-listing in the past. I don't know or like the pre-listing inspection is like kind of like vague.
Yeah.
I'd be like, hey, you should get an inspection. We should call Dylan and get an inspection. They might go, let me think about it for like 2-3 days. And then you go, all right, well then that's 14 days now left in the buyer's period. And then you go call it. And then a week later they can show up. Not saying you do that, but then you wait another day or two to get the report.
Yeah.
And then you have like 4 or 5 days left in the inspection period. So all of a sudden you're like, well, I got to figure out like what we're going to get done.
For sure.
It's hard enough to get a contract like we were talking about before. You want to get a contractor out to give you a price on, how much is it going to cost to rebuild this termite-ridden deck? Most contractors are going to go, I'm not coming out there and doing all the math and like looking at it and calculating lumber just to give you a cost.
For sure.
Like that's why the pest inspection's so awesome, because they at least give you like a rough number. I mean, they'll give you the price for replacing like wood rot and everything.
Yeah.
But the deck, I mean, some of the bigger decks, a lot of those pest companies, they'll sub it. Obviously, they sub it out. But
yeah,
you're gonna want like a true carpenter to build a big deck, and you're not gonna be able to get a price in that time frame. I would say availability is huge. You take care of agents that take care of you, and so like you will squeeze it in to fit it.
Yeah.
And now that you have like a part-time inspector working with you, you're even more like streamlined. You can be like, dude, we can do 3 that day if they're like solid realtors or they're solid properties.
For sure.
I know it's availability. I mean, a lot of the inspectors that we've dealt with, I think we've dealt with 3. You're the only one we call now, but like I think we've dealt with 3. I mean, we've never had one where it's like, man, I don't feel like this is thorough.
Yeah, for
but
sure.
Sometimes the report, like your report's really easy to read. And some that we've seen have been like kind of a little bit more like, smaller font. Everything's packed in there. It's harder to flow between the sections,
Yeah.
So that can be, a challenge. But other than that, most inspectors around here, they're friendly. It's not like
Oh yeah.
It's not like we have any like rogue guys out there that are a pain in the butt to deal with.
Yeah, for sure.
It's availability and then comfortability and style of communication that fits our style, which we found with you.
Yeah. No, I'd say that's pretty common feedback. I think the biggest thing a lot of times that like you had mentioned is I always hear is availability, but then also a report that you can read, you know what I mean? Because like you said, sometimes those get, they just get difficult, to really figure out, hey, what's important, what's going on, that kind of deal.
And that lifted his butt. Can't help the camera shut off a little bit ago.
Did it?
Yeah, I think so.
It's good practice.
Yeah. I think when the screen goes blank, it shuts off. Here we go.
I think, would you say a lot of the home inspectors around here have trade experience?
Yeah, you know, yes and no. I would say actually a lot do. A big one actually you see, I know a few inspectors around here will come from the termite industry actually, where they were like a termite inspector for years and then they come over. So yeah, I would say a lot of inspectors do. You know, there was someone around here, I think, I don't know if he's still working. It's really common in our industry actually. A lot of firefighters, a lot of shift workers will try to have a home inspection too on the side. Because I get it when if you're only working like 2 days a week, you're like, oh, I got 5 other days I could work. And so that's pretty common in the industry. But yeah, I'd say a lot come from the trades. I mean, I always tell people, I mean, you don't have to necessarily come from the trades to be an inspector, obviously. There's no requirement. I think it's super important to actually like just know the parts and pieces of a house, how it's built, that kind of thing. And I also just think it helps you with a lot of the understanding side, but it also helps you, you know, when it comes to, it was great for me when I was in business, got started, is I already had a great network of contractors to refer people to because I'd been in the industry, you know, for years before I was an inspector.
Gotcha.
Probably similar to, do you think, you know, now that your business is, you know, the size that it is, you've been in business, you know, 7, 8 years, do you think someone could do a painting business without ever having painted? You know, it seems like your systems are so dialed, at least from the outside perspective. I see how you can teach someone to do a quote, you know, and kind of based on the size, square footage, all that kind of stuff. Is it something you think, hey, yeah, you know, if you're kind of business savvy and have dialed systems, or do you think it's still important, like, oh no, I think it's good that you've been a painter and you know what's involved, and so you know how to run crews and what they need and that kind of thing?
You can run a painting business without ever picking up a paintbrush, but in California, so I know how to paint, so I'm the norm. Usually a painting company owner knows how to paint.
Yeah, it came from the trade.
So most painting companies are like 1 to 4 guys. It's not most of them, like 90-something% of companies in the country are like 1 to 4 guys.
Yeah.
So honestly, the owners are working. They're painting, right? That being said, I know a whole bunch of painting business owners around the country that have never picked up a paintbrush. The caveat with California is that you need a C33 license, a contractor's license, painting and decorating license, which you need 4 years of painting experience to obtain.
Yeah.
So if you have a company here in California and you don't know how to paint, but you want to start a painting company, you hire a managing partner or a manager
to qualify for the license.
Get the license, and put the license under the company name. You know, if they ever leave the company, then you have to find a new person within, I think it's 90 days.
Yeah.
It's not very, not a lot of cushion there. But so you can do it in California. It's a little bit more tricky. Some other states, all you need is a business license and liability insurance, and you're ready to go.
For sure.
Matter if you know how to do it. Especially other states where you can subcontract painting work to like sub crews, where you're basically just hiring people, you're 1099ing them, you're collecting their workers' comp insurance, and they have like 2 or 3 guys, and they paint house after house for you, and you give them like 50%.
Yeah.
So a lot of the guys do that, and they, like my friend Brad in Michigan, he doesn't know how to paint.
Yeah.
You know, but Ellison Painting is like $3 million plus, you know, business. But he used to be an estimator for another painting company.
Yeah.
With estimating too, with most residential and commercial estimating, it's math. You know, you're measuring walls. You learn about substrates and what kind of drywall you paint, what kind of paint you use on this, how you prep a surface. As long as you just teach somebody this is how we do the job, like on paper, anybody can estimate a paint job. I mean, you can get like some like intricate stain work where you might call me as the sales manager and say like, hey, Seth, I need you to look at this.
Or, hey, could you, that's why you have a sales manager.
Yeah.
Because like, hey, this is like a weird situation. Are the guys going to be able to reach that? And then you go, get the operations crew involved,
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean,
So if you're subcon,
it's easier, I think, if you don't know how to paint, because then you don't have the head trash of being like a painter. So you think about things pragmatically. I would say it would probably be easier if I didn't know how to paint, because then I would just be like, I would be thinking about it in terms of numbers and business and marketing.
yes.
But I think too much about like the painting side of it. And I get too wrapped up in like that when I'm like quoting a job or like we're discussing the job. It'd be better if I didn't know much about it. That way the operations team was like just the expert and I was just the sales and marketing expert. I could see how that could be a benefit actually.
For sure.
But it doesn't hurt that I know how to paint. So if I get on the phone with someone, I can really explain the system to them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
But-
that's a good point.
Yeah.
I mean, I know we've talked about this, but I think especially in the construction industry and the trades, that's a hard one, because a lot of guys might be like really great at their craft and whatever trade it is, but they don't know how to run a business and what's involved in how to market and how to manage employees and that kind of thing, the
Yeah.
business side of it, even though they're like insanely good at their craft. You know what I mean? Vice versa, like you just said, it's like you could be really good at all the business stuff and not even know jack squat about the actual process,
Right.
which I feel like is more beneficial if you're trying to, if you're running the business, obviously.
Right. I think a lot of people that own businesses shouldn't own businesses in general.
Yeah. No,
Not just in construction. I think it's where like people that learn how to do something, they almost think that the only way to make more money is to like start doing it on their own.
for sure.
And that's a mindset that's not going to get you really far and can build a lot of stress in your life. Like, why do you want to start a business? Well, I want to be my own boss. I'm like, well, why don't you
Be a subcontractor.
go work for be a subcontractor or go work for a large company. You might have to move out of the state. You might have to move out of the city, move to a different area. But why don't you go work for a large contractor, be an outside salesperson, have no schedule, and make commission.
Yeah.
There you go. You're your own boss.
For sure, without
So,
all
like,
the headaches of the
without
business.
no headaches of like employees. Or you want to go be a supply warehouse manager for like, if you're an electrician, you want to I'm going to go work in the supply side.
Yeah,
You can become the boss, but not own the company, right?
for sure.
So I think a lot of guys and gals, they think that because I know how to do this and I want to make more money, I need to start a business. And that's not, unfortunately, I don't think that's the best way to look at it, because I see a lot of people that they struggle,
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that's a good point. I mean, I think a lot of people don't always realize like all the back end side of a business. I think people just see like, oh, you get to make your own schedule and you have a kind of unlimited ceiling in a sense of earning potential and that kind of thing, and they don't see all the headaches and trials and tribulations that come with having a business, and they're not really prepared for that or aware of that, and then they get into it and then they're like, oh, shoot, like I gotta do accounting and bookkeeping and make sure I'm paying my quarterly taxes and doing X, Y, and Z, and I got to market because the work's not just going to show up by itself, and
Right.
So many hats you have to wear. That's not just do the work and get paid.
Nice. Touch.